One of the country's top prosecutors, the head of the criminal division at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., that person oversees criminal cases in the nation's capital, has resigned. Her name is Denise Chung. She has been in that office since 2000. She departed abruptly after interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin asked for her resignation when she refused to send an order to a bank to freeze assets. She believed there was not enough evidence to do that. Chung praised her colleagues in her resignation letter this morning for, quote, following the facts and the law and complying with our moral, ethical, and legal obligations. The need to focus on that exact mission, following the facts and the law, guided by ethical obligations, is the subject of a letter from hundreds of former federal prosecutors, including former special counsel Jack Smith. They write this, quote, as prosecutors, we were rightly prohibited from making criminal charging decisions based on someone's political association, activities, or beliefs, or because of our personal feelings about them. Against this backdrop, we have watched with alarm as these values have been tested by recent actions of the department's leadership. Some of you have been ordered to make charging decisions based expressly on considerations other than the facts and the law, including to serve solely political purposes. Several of you have resigned, and others are wondering what will happen to the department we served and revere. To all of you, we communicate this. We salute and admire the courage many of you have already exhibited, and that will guide all of you as you continue to serve the interests of justice. You have responded to ethical challenges of a type no public servant should ever be forced to confront, with principle and conviction, in the finest traditions of the Department of Justice. Let's bring into our conversation former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissmann. He signed that open letter to current federal prosecutors we just read from. Also joining us, NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley. Tim is still with us as well. Ryan Riley, on the reporting, do we know whose assets she was asked to freeze that she refused to freeze?
Yeah, three sources tell NBC News this had to do with grants that were put out during the Biden administration involving the environment through the Environmental Protection Agency. But what you're talking about ultimately here is the government ordering is the key word here, a bank to freeze assets that no longer in the possession of the federal government. And in order to meet that threshold, there is a line that you would have to meet, right? And so she was not willing. She said that the evidence did not support writing a letter to the bank telling them to freeze these assets, and that's why she sort of drew the line here. What the letter that I've read, what it lays out is that she was, willing to sign a letter essentially saying that there should be further investigation here. But what it sounds like is that the FBI was going to be willing to send this letter to the bank, but that she said that there could be something more investigation looked into this. But if you step back for a moment, what you have ultimately is, according to her resignation letter, the Deputy Attorney General, acting Deputy Attorney General of the United States' office, directing a criminal prosecution and skipping all of those layers that typically go in between here. The idea was that there was going to be this opening of a criminal investigation involving a line assistant U.S. attorney within the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., and that was going to be directed by the Deputy Attorney General's office. So, this is another significant resignation. She's someone who's very well respected within the Justice Department and, by a lot of her colleagues. So this is something I think that, is another sort of warning sign about the way that the Trump administration intends to and is using the Justice Department so far.
Let me read some of what you're laying out from her letter. She writes this: I was asked to review documentation supplied by the Office of the Deputy Attorney General to open a criminal investigation into whether a contract had been unlawfully awarded by an executive agency before the change in administration and to issue grand jury subpoenas pursuant to this investigation. I was told there was a time sensitivity and action had to be taken that day because there was concern that contract awardees could continue to draw down on accounts handled by the bank handling the disbursements. I conferred with others, all of whom have substantial white-collar criminal prosecution experience, and reviewed documentation provided by the Deputy Attorney General in determining whether the predicate for opening such a grand jury investigation existed. Despite assessing that the existing documents on their face did not meet the threshold, an ODAG, Office of Deputy Attorney General rep, stated that he believes sufficient predication existed, including in the form of a video where statements were made by a former political appointee of the executive agency in question. clearly, this is sort of the heart. This is the actual. You know, if criminal prosecutions begin at conception, this is conception, right? Is there predicate for investigating a crime? And she says no, and they were going to force her. What does that portend for the department?
Yeah, you know, as you're reading this letter, another thing that also just like registered for me is she's so obedient with the Justice Department rules that have been ingrained upon her for 24 years that, you know, even in her resignation letter, she doesn't refer specifically to the entity that we're talking about here because, you know, that would suggest that it would be outside of the four corners of the law, right? Because someone hasn't been charged yet. So she's not going to say, oh, they referred to this video from this former Biden appointee. She puts it in this broad language, so leaves it to us to sort of, as reporters, sort of figure out the details of this. Even in her resignation letter, right? She's still obeying those Justice Department protocols and those rules that are put in place to make sure that individuals' rights aren't violated and that people aren't being smeared with the notion of a criminal investigation when the facts don't merit a criminal investigation. And that's what she ultimately, you know, determined here, is that this was based on the evidence that she had been presented to this point, there was not enough to tell a bank that there was probable cause that a crime had been committed here and to freeze those assets. Because, you know, what you're talking about when you're talking about the EPA freezing grants, and there was a statement from the EPA saying they were going to work with DOJ at one point to look into those, you know, the money that had already been allocated. But that's a political move. That's not about an allegation of actual fraud or wrongdoing. That's basically just saying we didn't like this thing that the old administration did, and we're going to try to claw back some of that money. And that's just not how the constitutional order is meant to work. That was what the old administration did. That money is already out the door. The government, you know, theoretically shouldn't be seizing back money unless there's actual proven, you know, wrongdoing, or at least the suggestion, at least probable cause of wrongdoing here. But that's what you have the Trump administration trying to do. Basically, the Justice Department being just like another agency within the federal government, when that's not the post-Watergate tradition that we have, you know, especially with the working between different agencies that we've seen where they're sort of partnering up. That's, I think, a common thing that we've seen, you know, with U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, for example. He's offered his concierge prosecutorial services to DOJ, saying that, you know, they'll help out with any threats against them. Just very unusual lines of communications that we're seeing.
But I want to make sure I understand what she's alleging. She's alleging that the Deputy Attorney General asked her to fabricate a crime when she didn't see one.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I want to just underscore some things. First, Denise Chung, full disclosure, I've known her for many, many years. She's not a friend, but she's a colleague. Many people have known her. I think one of the things that you and Ryan have pointed out, she's been a prosecutor for 24 years. That means she is used to serving under many different administrations. Right. Nobody would describe her as the deep state. She is your classic worker bee person who you want in government. So that this is who you're dealing with, somebody who has dealt with and worked with Republican and Democratic administration. So I want to make sure that's just like what we've seen in terms of the resignations of key people in the Southern District of New York. That's who she is. Super reputable, wonderful reputation. Second, I want to make sure people understand, though, what is being said here, what the import is. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, I'm not going to get too nerdy, that is all about protecting all of our privacy. It requires that there's factual predication before there is a search and before there is a seizure. That factual predication means there has to be probable cause. What Denise is saying in her resignation letter is she looked at all of the evidence that was given to her by the Deputy Attorney General's office, and she did not see probable cause. She did not even see enough to really go forward at all. She said, maybe you should look at something, but you cannot issue a freeze letter. Just to be clear, a freeze letter is not some, oh, this is a nice little letter. It's seizing an account. Under the Fourth Amendment, that is a seizure. It requires probable cause. It is a constitutional prohibition on what the government can do unless it has that factual predication. And she is saying, I looked at this, my career people looked at this, and we could not go forward. And she is being told, do it anyway. And for her to resign over this, somebody who is, think of the think of somebody who spent that long devoted to the Justice Department, to public service, and to policies she may have agreed with or disagreed with from time to time. That's what happens when you're in government. You don't agree with everything, but we've talked about this. Elections have consequences. For her to be saying, I cannot do this, it's because it is so over the line, and it is a constitutional prohibition that she is saying, I am not doing that. This could not be more serious, not just because this is like a canary in the coal mine. It's the coal mine coming. It is, you have to put it in context of what we were just talking about, and there's going to be a hearing tomorrow in the Southern District of New York. It's all of a piece of really lawless action that's being ordered to be taken by people who have taken an oath to the Constitution and are willing to suffer the consequences because they're not going to violate that oath.